So, Catalina, how lovely to see you again. We met at the inaugural Society Integrative Oncology conference in Oxford. It's really wonderful to welcome you onto the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I would love to launch into that first question. Why does integrative medicine or integrative oncology matter to you?
I think every day more and more we're seeing that patients or clients are looking for a response from the health team that are going to take care of them, that it's going to be looking after the health in very different aspects. So from a nutrition point of view, from a physical point of view, also, then obviously we want all the chemical part, the biochemics to be there and working and understanding anatomy. And this is really going to be studied by many different profiles that need to be put together. That I think that this is the point of view of integrative medicine, where we are looking at the whole of the individual. We're not looking at just the specialty, which I think it's very important when we are talking about medicine of high precision and personalization, where we are looking at targeted ways of really tackling an illness. But I think that the future of medicine needs to be so broad as to be, from one side, very personalized and very specialized into understanding the mechanism of action, but at the same time, to be looking at the whole individual as a whole. So that's why I like integrative medicine and integrative oncology, because we are capable of doing that and bringing that approach from multiple specialities working together hand by hand.
Yeah, I love that image. And you know, it's been a really interesting journey for me. My PhD was around non-drug approaches to supporting the cancer patient. And part of what drove me was safety or seeing lots of added side effects with pharmaceuticals. So now in my journey of discovery with medicinal mushrooms, I'm starting to see something with specific effects, but very safe because of its ancient ability to work with the body's natural pharmacology, natural physiology. And, viewers, listeners might not know that you've set up this incredible company, Hifas da Terra, which is starting to really, with its science, push forward this frontier of the use of medicinal mushroom to stimulate, modulate, create changes in the immune system. I wonder, where did it all begin for you? Like, where did your interest in mushrooms and medicinal mushrooms begin?
Well, my interest in mushrooms comes from, where Hifas da Terra stand, really. This is a family-owned land. It's kind of a small manor house in Galicia, it's in the Camino way.
Yeah.
Santiago. And my father, he's a researcher, so he's a phytopathologist, a plant doctor. And as a phytopathologist, he always mycologist. He's one of the great mycologists of Europe. And I grew up in this ambience of science, of microscopes, of running around big bottles with snakes. The typical lab that would be kind of Marie Curie's image that we all have in mind. Well, that was my dad's lab. And I grew seeing him researching and understanding the very fragile and strong at the same time, the balance in ecosystems of how also mushrooms work side by side with plants, and they can be either good or bad for them as well. We have the cancer of the chestnut tree, which my father discovered coming from the United States into Europe. And because of this relation, incredibly, I started first the cancer in the sweet chestnut trees, and then in people. Well, as I say, I grew my house with the kitchen, with my mom's apron would be with mushrooms, all of that today you can see, because there's this big trend of mushrooms coming around. But, like 50 years ago, it was not that easy to find everything about mushrooms, but my house was like that. So little figures of little mushrooms posted with mushrooms, we would make like cooking venues for people that could understand the difference in gathering and fostering the mushrooms in the woods every autumn. And my father would do that with a research center. So I grew up understanding the difficulty of mycology, how, to me, I grew up seeing it and understanding the ecosystems, understanding the evolution of nature. And I could see that was not something so familiar to many of my biologists, my colleagues in faculty, even for teachers. So then we had a professor that he wanted us to build a company. So he said, we need business people that are scientists, because always companies are built with a business plan from business people with business minds that then they want to, the main thing is to make money. And then what are we making money with? Well, health. Well, that's it. He was saying like, we need to put first health results, first changes in all the analysis and analytics, and then money will come with that business plan. You need to make it work as obviously a business, but always put first the interest of society, improving society with innovation, with research, with bringing true science to society. So this was the seed for Hifas da Terra's project in university. So Hifas is a spin-out from University of Santiago de Compostela. And we started with these leads of, you always need to innovate, you always need to bring results, and demonstrate everything must be backed by science, evidence-based.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool for change, because if we can reassure clinicians in the field that this is high quality science and evidence, and then that empowers our clients, patients, to be able to say, actually, can you look at the evidence? Because there's the evidence, but then we need people in the field to look at the evidence. So what's most exciting you at the moment in terms of the evidence? What do you feel like has been a really satisfying loop for you?
I think that what we are seeing is, and it's so satisfying, is the capacities mushrooms have in molecules. So, the difference between a one drug is that we're talking about one molecule. It's monomolecule. So it's only one, but it's in very high purity. And that's going to work very well. And it also is going to have side effects because of its purity. When we're talking about extracts of medicinal mushrooms, they're highly pure, but they do have many molecules. They have what it's called a cohort of molecules. It's a group of molecules. Sometimes we thought it was like 400 molecules. Now that we are realizing with more techniques as bioscience evolves, what we are seeing is that we can even have more than 2,000 new molecules, even in an extract of reishi, for example.
Wow.
So the very interest is that when nature builds a product, it does always an effect, and also the modulation of that effect. It brings up and down, and it controls, it balances. So it's going to be much softer and gentle than the effect if we pick up one of those molecules, we purified it, and we concentrate and we make a drug from it. So because of this richness that it has in different molecules, we see so many effects. The basics will be immunomodulation, because mushrooms are biological response modifiers, meaning that they are capable of modifying the biological response. And understanding modification, that modulation, it's very difficult even for, practitioners, because we're used to seeing either you activate something or you inhibit. But to have
Yes.
something that modulates, that the same dose with the same principle activates or inhibits, that is quite a thing. And this is exactly what mushrooms can do. So what we're going to see is that we can work very safely with mushrooms in many different aspects. And to me, I always think about the Hippocratic Oath, which is primum non nocere,
Yeah.
primum never harm,
Yeah. Do no harm.
do no harm. And this is exactly what mushrooms bring to the table.
Yeah.
So they are going to be always so gentle that unless someone reacts against because is allergic to a mushroom, it's very safe to work with them.
Yeah, I think this is what I'm learning, and also this property of natural elements, which is, with integrative medicine, we look at balance and alignment. And it feels to me that that nature's intelligence over millions of years through mushrooms has developed this ability, as you say, to modulate. What if something is too up, you bring it down. If something's too down, you bring it up. So essentially it's rebalancing. And at the same time, I think you'd agree, strengthening, because, I'm watching my cancer patients strengthen with the medicinal mushroom. I mean, and that might be directly due to building resilience in the immune system. But we're also now understanding gut health, aren't we? Mushrooms are adding to gut health as well. Could you say a bit about that?
So what we're seeing where mushrooms can bring help because of this richness of the contents, the molecules that they have, we see that they work on the immune system. We see they work on health, so in neurons directly as antioxidant, as improving the connections of the neurons. We're going to see how it works on the microbiome. So at a level of microbiota, there are prebiotics that are going to work with our probiotics, with our bacteria. And so we're going to see really a symbiotic effect where we can see really those probiotics working because they have enough food to then process and go to for those secondary products that they're going to produce and that effect of symbiosis. Then we can also see that is going to improve the cells. So for example, we can see how many times where there's a cycle for a cell, it's going to be very rejuvenating because it's going to help that cell to reproduce faster, not on a cancer, but on a healthy individual. Again, thanks to that adaptogen effect. It's really incredible because you can see on gut that the cells of the mucosa normally reproduce every 57 hours. With the extract of lion's mane in presence in a petri dish, we can see this happening in 17 hours. So meaning someone has Helicobacter pylori, for example, we are going to see an antibiotic effect from the mushrooms because they have partially an antibiotic effect. Obviously, as I explained before, it's not a drug, it's not purified, so it's not the same as if you take an antibiotic, but it does have partially that effect of antibiotic. And also, then it's going to renew cells, meaning that we're going to see the gut working much better and also curing those ulcers that Helicobacter is going to produce, for example. So also we're going to see how we are increasing and protecting cardiovascular health, the heart, arteries, because we're going to see arteries more elastic. And you know that your real age is not your birthday, but it's how your arteries are, how flexible your arteries are. And that is something that reishi, it's a very well-known mushroom for doing this. And we're going to see so many effects. Polyporous is a mushroom that it's going to work on all the liquids. So we're going to see how we can move all the liquids on the body. It's mucolytic at the same time that it's going to help, for example, on recurrent cystitis, and it's going to protect us against recurrent cystitis, or when we have a liquid that it's retained, that's going to help moving all those liquids. So every mushroom has a specific impact on the body. And what we do is to formulate products to work with them in what we have called mycotherapy, which is the therapy with the use of mushrooms, either the fruiting body or mycelium or the extract.
And, traditional Chinese medicine, revered the reishi, didn't it, as a longevity mushroom. So we also see the traditional use of over many thousands of years, didn't we, with the ancients understanding that mushrooms were beneficial. But now with mycotherapy, and also my understanding is the way you're combining. So you might combine reishi and lion's mane, is that right? Thinking of the nervous system, for example, or thinking of the cardiovascular. Would you say a little bit more about that mycotherapy?
Yes, what we do is we've been now for 26 years using mushrooms at a clinical level. So seeing really the results with patients, with doctors, with oncologists, with different specialties. Now we're going into gynecology. What we have seen is that different mushrooms, as we said, have different molecules. So if we combine these different mushrooms, we can bring different properties together and strengthen the result that we're going to achieve. So we have been studying these different protocols for many years, and now we bring these products together with the finished formula, the final formulas. As you say, for example, we're looking at antiviral product, for example, or properties, because we are looking at long COVID. So we are putting together cordyceps and reishi because they have antiviral effects. So that is for one product. But then if we want to look at gut, the axis, gut and brain, then we're looking at reishi and lion's mane. If we're looking at a prebiotic effect, well, then we're looking at the mushroom as a whole, as the fruiting body that it's dried and milled, not extracted, because that has a prebiotic effect that is bigger than if we have it on extract. So what we are doing is not as much as we're now, because they are becoming trendy. We know a lot, everybody knows a lot about lion's mane, Erythroma marinaceus, and about how that affects brain and gut. But there's so many, mycotherapy, it's a whole kingdom. It's like we were talking about plants and animals, there's a whole kingdom for fungi. So there's so much to learn, and there's so that it's like I always explain, it's like if we had suddenly we discovered the plant kingdom and we find a rose and we say, "Oh, look, this is a rose." Yes, but you will have so many trees, so, so many weeds, even so many things that as a whole kingdom, there's so much to study from now on, and we're just starting to understand and to see their potential. So this is what mycotherapy is about. It's how can we use the different parts of the mushroom in this case, because every part has a different use, and every mushroom has a different use. For example, cordyceps is the mushroom for energy, fertility, vitality, and it gives you even 30 to 40% more ATP. So that is like the molecule of energy. So you can run more, be more vigorous, even build more muscle. Then we have, it also increases the oxygen in blood by 30%. So it's like you're running with an oxygen bomb on your back, So it's really powerful. And we bring this different blends when we're talking, for example, for oncology. What we're doing now, we are bringing our second clinical trial. It's going to be published in this semester, it might be. This one is in breast cancer, alongside with chemotherapy and immunotherapy and radiotherapy. And what we are seeing is the improvement on quality of life, on the microbiota, and how the differences we're going to see on the microbiota parameters from when they reach the hospital with the diagnosis, they start taking the product, and how their microbiota evolves when they are taking the product, and how that affects to the prognostics. It's impressive. And this is something we're going to work, and it's going to start from this study. I think it's going to be a shift It might be worldwide because this is the first ever study in double-blinded, placebo randomized control that is going, obviously in humans, it's being produced with medicinal mushrooms alongside conventional oncology treatment. And from there, I think we're going to have a very, very nice publications with very, very nice results.
This is vital, isn't it? Because, the oncologists quite rightly, have to use very powerful drugs that they worry about, and they therefore worry about any interaction. Is there any evidence of mushroom conventional cancer treatment interaction? Because, I've just got a friend going through cancer treatments at the moment, and she's doing incredibly well because she's using mushrooms, she's fasting, her quality of life, admittedly just through that first cycle, is incredible with minimal symptoms. Her oncologist is open, but some oncologists are saying take nothing, do nothing, just do what we say. But I just wondered if there was any preliminary data about the safety element of combining medicinal mushroom with conventional treatments.
Yes, we do have that evidence now. We have done 2 clinical trials, while one in colorectal cancer, the other one is in breast cancer. We have passed, both these studies have been done in the NHS, in the Spanish NHS, and they have gone through the ethical committees. Ethical committee is a committee where you need to demonstrate all the safety of what you're going to use on those patients, obviously. And then we have seen already the safety in those clinical trials. Not only that, but we also made an assessment where we could see that our extracts are very pure and they do not interact with cytochromes P450 or any of the families of the cytochrome. This is hugely important. And therefore, I need to make an advice here of saying not every mushroom is safe to use in a cancer patient, okay? This is very serious because we've been studying and we are the leaders on bioscience with medicinal mushrooms. Not all the practices of producing mushrooms are the same. So because we are making extracts on a medical level, it doesn't mean every single mushroom that is out there can be used on a patient. And this is extremely important because, as you know, with a product that it's going to be taken alongside chemotherapy or immunotherapy, if we are interfering with any of the cytochromes, it could mean that then the actual drug, the chemotherapeutic, is not working or it's working too much and it could be dangerous. So I always feel that we need to put this word out there of saying, because we're doing this, it doesn't mean that every single mushroom that is out there can be taken, while they need to make tests, run tests, and see that they are safe to take. This is exactly why most oncologists rightly say, do not take anything, because obviously it's very difficult, as you know, to understand every single company, every single active principle, natural product that it's out there, and obviously, and at the same time, be updated with all the chemotherapeutics, all the immunotherapy. And I mean, I have to say that oncologists, you are the people I have seen in my professional life that study the most. Because oncologists are always in congresses, always updating themselves.
Yes, very much so.
And it's very difficult to keep on not only with the conventional oncology, but at the same time with natural products, all of them. And to be completely fair, not every single product has evidence that can be used. So to me, Hifas, for example, in the countries where we are working with oncologists know Hifas da Terra because we are at the congresses, because we explain our evidence, because we expose our clinical trials. But any other brand, any other mushrooms need to demonstrate for the safety of the patient.
I agree with that. Can you tell us about the colorectal study? What mushrooms did you choose to study and what outcomes did you choose and what did you find?
So what we found was also We worked on a basis of lion's mane, because lion's mane is really good, the extract as well as the prebiotic part of the fruiting body. So it's the different parts that are in the formula, as well as it has also the reishi, maitake, agaricus blasei muril, which is the sun royal mushroom, which is really good for the bone marrow, for producing all the white blood cells. And that is the one that is in charge of controlling the immune system while we're undergoing chemotherapy, and patients can keep on going with the cycles safely. Maitake, that it's the mushroom that it's going to help with secondary effects, with all the muscle pains and all the different pains that the chemotherapy does. Also, one that is very important is neuropathy, peripheric neuropathy. We are seeing that we can avoid peripheric neuropathy with the use of lion's mane and reishi mushrooms
Really?
in the
Wow.
formula. And what we saw, essentially, the most important result was the changes on the microbiota profile of the patients versus the control patients, as well as the ratio between neutrophils and lymphocytes. That ratio decreased under 2.8. And that is very, in the last publications that have been done in the 2025, there is a very important link to good pronostics, to a better survival rate. So what we see with that is that mushrooms are working in the immune system to help us protect ourselves, even allowing chemotherapy to work properly. So even when people are on their FOLFOX cycles or very strong chemotherapy cycles, we can see chemotherapy working better. We can see 5-fluorouracil, for example, that is improved with the use of mycotherapy, the use of mushrooms alongside. And what we see is less toxic effect. So the mycotherapy is protecting the body against the toxicity. And on the other hand, it's making the cytotoxics work better.
This is the dream ticket, isn't it? You know, that the idea that if you're going to undergo a really challenging course of treatment, you want to make sure that that treatment is optimized to give you the longest survival. And just to clarify, that peripheral neuropathy is where nerves get damaged from certain types of chemotherapy, and it can be quite debilitating with pain and numbness in fingers and toes. So even that one side effect, if you can protect against that, even that one side effect, but what I'm hearing you say is that there are multiple side effects, but also that there may be markers here of inflammation, that you're reducing inflammation while being stressed by the chemotherapy and immune therapy. So again, what you're doing is building very active resilience during the challenge of those cancer treatments. Would that be right?
Exactly. It's exactly so. You know, to express it that it's easy to understand, I always love to think of the mushrooms as Penelope in the Ulysses,
Yeah.
because she would undo at night what she was doing during the day in order to wait for Ulysses and not be remarried. So mushrooms at night, they undo whatever, harm has been done to the body by chemotherapy, and allowing just the goodness of the chemotherapy to be, on its best. So what it's doing, it's really helping the treatment to get the best out of it, as you're saying, to really improve during the day, and the moment that it's applied, all the strength and the focus of that treatment on all the different angles of anti-angiogenesis, cytotoxicity, trying to really reduce the tumor, not feed the tumor with new vessels of blood, to really control and stress, that tumor, in order that the immune system can recognize those cells and eat them up and clean the body. And then at night, the patient recovers and recovers the immune system and recovers the cells that are reproducing faster in order to replace the cells that were killed. And they were killed for good because they had to be. That's why we are talking about these very powerful tools and drugs in chemotherapy or in other therapies. Whenever that is done, then we need to clear and make the clearance of those drugs out of the body, accompanying them to detox the body and make them leave the body and recover and rebuild. And that is exactly what mushrooms do.
Amazing. And, I have an interest in fasting during cancer treatments. Again, you talked right at the beginning about this beautiful connection between you as an individual, as a family, with the land, with mushrooms, nature. And, again, with fasting, we're using the body's natural ability to protect healthy cells. And I think that's quite an interesting differential. We can expose the cancer cell, which is not in the body's orchestration. It has kind of escaped from it. So I guess the question I'm interested in ultimately with research is what would happen if we started to combine, medicinal mushroom and fasting, mind, body. And as you know, I've been very interested with mistletoe and its ability to reduce side effects. I just wanted to ask about, like mucositis, which is an inflammation of the mouth, and you'll see that inflammation going down into the gut. It sounds like what you're saying is at night, the mushroom might be able to help the body repair faster. Did you see any reduction in those kind of side effects within your colorectal trial?
Yes. And what we saw, I mean, in thousands of patients as well in all these years, the most important is to start taking the product as soon as possible.
Mm.
Because the more those secondary effects install in the body, if you have a candida, so the candida is a fungus that, as you say, the candidiasis that it's installed in all the throat and in all the mucositis that is going to cause. It's going to install in a deficient body of the immune system. Why? Because we are treating the immune system, and obviously with chemotherapy, we are killing actually that immune system in order to be able also to kill the cancer cells. So the body is less capable of defending itself from an invasion of this fungus, Candida albicans. So what if we are working with the medicinal mushrooms from the very beginning, from diagnose, even in neoadjuvancy, meaning before the treatment starts, before conventional treatment starts, what we're going to see is that the person is going to be uplifted with more energy. It's going to be safeguard with protection for the immune system, for the mucosas, everything. It's going to be healthier to start with the treatment. So what is very important is that we don't let the patient, go deteriorating. And then when it's very difficult, then try to recover. We need to think of a prevention. Always, I think natural medicine, difference is, as you know, that natural medicine is slower than big drugs, obviously. You cannot expect like an immediate effect. So it's going to take time to build up results. So the earlier we start, the stronger the person will be when has to really confront those secondary effects. So it is very extremely important that we can protect in order this mucositis and other side effects that are not going to happen, even like, for example, the nails, muscular pain, hair, skin, all of it. The earlier we start, the more protected the person will be.
Yes, and in the UK, we are now calling that prehabilitation.
Exactly.
And the oncologists are getting interested. We have a lovely colleague here in the southwest of England who's interested in prehabilitation, they are a bit restricted in what they can do, but like exercise is a
Exercise.
very important way to energize the body, and then starting to really get your lovely rainbow colored diet.
Yes.
As you say, and it's the same for us when we're recommending mistletoe. If we can get the body immune stimulated prior to the
Exactly.
chemo, then you're kind of prehabilitating or building resilience prior to the marathon run of your chemo. And it makes total sense, doesn't it?
Nice. And nice. And with exercise, it's exactly like that. I mean, I remember in Oxford when they were exactly talking about the prehabilitation, which was really interesting. It makes completely sense because I mean, we all have been more muscly and, in perfect fit at some point of our life. And then we haven't
Yeah.
forward that right now. And you realize how good you were feeling when you were, in your 20s or whenever that was with your muscled, toned, fit, how it doesn't feel when we're not like that. And, so meaning that obviously, yes, the body, I don't know why we took so long in really coming back to these things that are so basic and elementary, isn't it?
Yeah. And even the psychology. I mean, I've been working as an integrative clinician within integrative oncology for 30 years, but it just wasn't called that. But like for me, the psychology would be, well done. You've done well. Let's think about how to keep your body resourced, optimized. Like so many negative things are told to people, you'll just feel worse and worse. You'll get tired and tired. Like it's just interesting for me that it makes sense, to really view it a bit like, sports communities would get match fit, and that would include the psychology, that you're going to get through this and you're going to be okay. It's so
Totally. When we have work with patients that are going to start, I always say embrace the treatment.
yeah,
Think once you are going to start chemotherapy or monotherapy, whatever it is, embrace it because you want it all. Any kind of treatment has a part that's going to be a placebo effect. Chemotherapy as well.
yeah,
So you need to activate that placebo effect as well on the chemotherapy. So we have to say, I'm going to do this because I want to do it and it's going to help me. Then I'm going to clear its effect and detoxify with the help of the mushrooms. We're going to use also mistletoe. We're going to use nutrition. We're going to go for a walk if I can walk, if I can run or whatever I can, or yoga or Pilates, or what can I do? Some mindfulness, breathe, drink a lot of water. So embrace everything because as long as we have all of this that we know that it's going to cause no damage at all, everything that it can bring, it's going to be good. It's going to be improvement. And if we think that, and we never, the most important thing, nobody knows. Nobody has a crystal ball
yes,
to know when is it going to be or how is it going to be. And there are some, I mean, all that we are in this world know that sometimes there is a big responder. And because that therapy made sense specifically to that person, the immune system suddenly sees the cells and just gets rid completely of the tumor. And it doesn't even matter in which stadium that person is, but this sometimes happens. Sadly, it's not everyone. We wish that could be like that. Sadly, it's not like that. But one should always think, okay, what if it's me? What if I'm the one that's going to be as lucky as to be a good responder?
yeah.
And
So I love what you're saying, and I love this idea of embracing everything. It's exactly the difference between alternative medicine and integrative medicine. And I think that sometimes people are surprised when I'm really encouraging them to befriend the chemotherapy, think of it like your assistant. But I know we have to finish in a minute, but I loved the way Embrace Everything is the integrative medicine model, and everything you named there, which will personalize or suit different people. And you're quite right. We've had, through the decades, we've been reporting these exceptional patients who seemed, even in advanced cancers, to somehow a response is triggered, a long-term response is triggered. And I think that that's why the psychology of uncertainty, we don't know who that person will be, but let's think of embracing everything, and you might find your way to respond, So it's a beautiful description of a very diverse model of care. So we're coming up to the end. We could talk forever, but I just wondered, was there one other thing that you'd love to share with our viewers and listeners that's just really exciting you at the moment?
Well, I think, it's information. We never had so much information. It is true that cancer is on the rise. Every day we have more and more cancer. And I think we all have to take a moment to think why. Obviously, we know 3% is written in our DNA, but it's only 3%. And it's rising every day more and more. So meaning that there's something we're doing on a daily basis in our routines that it's
Yes.
harming us.
Yeah.
And I truly think that today there's more information than ever. And just, we need to stop. We need to stop to think on our daily routine, because that is what harms us, not what we do once in a weekend and we go for a drink. It's what we do every single day. And I think as a society, as we are all part of this society of the tribe, so in our different roles, we need to understand what is it that we are receiving or doing that is causing this effect. And I think the only way of really, reducing this increase, this incredible increase we're having of percentages of cancer rates every single year. I think when I read my thesis, when I defended my thesis 3 years ago, in 2040, it was said that we are going to increase 40% the cases, the number of diagnoses. And obviously it is something that it's on the ambience. So I really think that it is time for us as a society to reflect on this, everyone on our own role, and understand what are we doing to ourselves? How
Yeah.
can we stop this?
Yeah, and I agree. I've watched what I saw as an epidemic of breast cancer, 1 in 4, 1 in 8, 1 in 60, back in the day, rare. Now we're at 1 in 4, I think, of women. So it's like we need to ask the question and to know that we don't know the answer yet, but it's likely to be multifactorial. But I agree, the focus has been on how amazing our cancer treatments are, which they are developing in an amazing way. But if we don't ask the question, why is cancer increasing at this rate? Yeah, we will carry on having a huge burden of disease, both personally and societally.
Exactly.
Okay, well, we've left the podcast with a question, a huge, big question. I would also just say about medicinal mushroom and our nature connection, our planetary health, it's all the big picture of how we walk on the earth lightly. And at the moment, humans are clumping and clomping around. So how do we walk more lightly on the earth? So, yeah.
Take
So,
out your shoes and just walk on the earth. That is the thing. Now it's called grounding. I always say we give it names so it's fancier. Through this, just take out the boots and walk.
yeah.
On any park, anywhere that you're around, just feel the touch of earth under your feet, and that will make you reconnect instantly. That reconnection, I think it's one of the big losses that humanity has done in this last century. We need to reconnect with
Yeah,
nature.
I agree. So thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are, Catalina, but it's been a deep pleasure to be in conversation with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's a pleasure. I really admire all your work.
Thank you.